everyone. I am going to do a live reading of All That's Left Unsaid by Rowena Holloway, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Before, there are periods when he manages to forget. A few hours at first, soon a whole day, a week. Finally, a month of sleep-filled nights. Then it returns in a great wave of memory. All it takes is a word, a scent, the chill of wind on wet skin. It begins with a slap of water against granite and the mineral-tinged odor of dank stone. He recalls the glistening drops of water and lingers on the image of her exposed flesh. Then he's jerked awake by her echoing scream. From the beach it hadn't seemed so far, and in the Mediterranean heat the blue waters of Positano were inviting. "It will be an adventure," he'd told her. "You just want an excuse to get me into that skimpy bikini." She had smiled up at him with the adoration of early love and no inkling of what was to come. He'd been the first to reach deep water. Always wanting to test himself, he dived, intent of reaching the weedy bottom. The ocean tugged at his hair. He dove down until he felt ready to burst beneath the weight of water. Self-preservation made him kick for the surface. Through a veil of saturated hair, he gasped for air. She was still swimming out to meet him. Hers was the sedate, hesitant stroke of someone unfamiliar with the ocean. But she wouldn't make a fuss. She never did. It was why he had chosen her. Her faith in him was boundless. He gazed at the postcard-perfect sky and waited. The monolithic cliff towered skyward. Wind fluted through the breaks and crevices in its craggy face. Birds swooped and soared, then hung in the air currents that swept the scraggy brink. Their caws and squawks were like a warning. By the time she reached him, she gasped and sputtered as water stirred by wind and tide smacked at her lips. "It's so cold." "I know a way we can warm up." He winked as they trod water in the choppy swell. "Didn't that old woman say the cave was once a place for lovers' trysts?" That made her snort, and she pushed his head beneath the water. In retaliation, he grabbed her ankles and pulled her down for a salty kiss. When they surfaced, breathless and spluttering, she reminded him of the other myth about the cave. "Find me the gold, and I might let you cop a feel." Then she laughed. They'd already done much more than that. They swam on, battling the sea's efforts to hold them back, their exertions doing little to ward off the chill. By the time they reached the shallow arch of the cave entrance, the tide was high and the opening almost submerged. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Her jaw trembled as she spoke. It could have been the cold, though he felt it too, that uneasy sense that something wasn't quite right. But there was no way he'd turn back now. "Come on, we've come this far." Inside, it was dank and close. Seawater smacked against the jagged edge of a granite shelf. Suffused light filtered through a fissure in the stony ceiling and cast shadows on walls so flinty that in places they seemed serrated. As he hauled himself out, he tasted that unforgettable mineral-tinged dankness. He helped her onto the rocky shelf. Her white bathing suit hid nothing, and glistening droplets slid off her rosy, goose-fleshed body. She trembled when he touched her, but as he reached for her sodden bathing suit, she stopped him. "It feels like someone's watching," she whispered. He made a show of searching the cave. In the far reaches, beneath the ceiling, fissure, and the narrow beam of sunlight, he found a chasm as deep as a well. She stood not far away, shivering, her arms wrapped around herself, eyes huge as she gazed at the solid walls of the cavern. "This seems like an ideal place to stash some gold." He'd meant it as a joke, but as his eyes adjusted to the light, he saw something glimmer. A group of small stones lay scattered nearby. He snatched one up, tossed it in, and counted the seconds until it hit the bottom with a sharp crack. He calculated the depth was about twice his height, just shy of 4 meters. She only agreed to climb down because he was strong enough to haul her up again. That she might slip and fall never occurred to him. Neither of them considered what they would do if he couldn't reach her. Fed by the local myths, excitement made them reckless. Halfway down she called, "I think it's a bracelet. I'll try and—" A tumble of stones, her panicked shriek. In the smear of sunlight he could just make her out, curled on her side, motionless. Frantic, he called her name. When she finally moved, using words he thought would never pass her lips, he laughed with relief. "I like this full mouth side of you," he told her. "Shut up, there's something else down here." Then her scream split the cave. 1. The chirrup of telephones and the constant hum of conversation aren't doing any favors for my jet lag, nor is Commissario Magliari's attitude. "What is it you expect, Signora Taylor, Harriet Taylor?" Twice now I've told him my name, and still he couldn't care less. To him, I'm just a ghoulish foreigner offering a thin excuse for viewing a relic. You bring me a photograph and expect me to say, "Aha, the bracelet, it is the same. The foreigner, she has solved the mystery of the Positano skeleton." Magliari tosses the photograph on his desk, where it joins a cascade of reports and curling faxes. "You know nothing on investigating." Ready to argue, I take a breath and bite my lip. I couldn't make it work back in London when I had a job, contacts, confidence in my skills. Why did I think Italy, where I can't even speak the language, would improve my chances in investigative reporting? Disturbed by Magliari's glittering stare, I shift my gaze to the detritus of case reports that clutters his desk and the image sitting among them, and a large section of the scarred photograph that for me changed everything. "I can see you have a lot of cases," I say. "Surely this is one that could be cleared up quickly?" His chair complains as he leans back to clasp his hands behind his head. Sweat darkens the underarms of his pale shirt. "There is no such thing as quickly. There is protocol to be followed, and paperwork. Always there is paperwork, for me and for you." "Is that why you won't let me see the bracelet? Because of paperwork?" "No, Signora, I am not going to show it to you because I cannot." "Why not?" "You cannot just walk in from the street because the bracelet might be like one the friend of your mother once wore." He leans forward, chair protesting, and rests his forearm on the desk. His rolled-up sleeves reveal hair as thick as an ape's. "What do you think? That I keep evidence in my drawer? That I'm like the television detective who is obsessed with only one case? In Napoli, we do not have that luxury. You women, you think everything is easy." Easy? Nothing has been easy since I discovered the depths of my self-delusion, and my being female shouldn't have anything to do with my request. It's 1992. The Berlin Wall has fallen, the Cold War is over, and feminism has been alive and well for more than 30 years. But to this Neanderthal detective, a foreigner, a female foreigner, offering to help identify a body is nothing more than grit in his shoe. I want to slam my hands on the desk, to slap the supercilious lip curl he doesn't bother to hide. Instead, I try for the smile that once opened doors. "I'm sure there is some way you can shortcut the paperwork, Commissaria. It will only take a minute. If I could just see—" "I do not show you the bracelet because it is not here. It is with the—" He snaps his fingers several times, searching for the phrase, and an elegant blonde appears at his side to murmur in his ear. "Yes, pathologist. It is with a forensic pathologist. To see him, you must make a request, fill out the paperwork, prove you are who you say you are, wait for permission, and so on." The blonde slides a bundle of typed documents across his blotter, and the two converse in the rolling rapid fire of their native tongue. I'm forgotten, invisible, punished for my cheap attempt at flattery. Scuff marks and the stains of past coffee spills mar the pale flagstones under Magliari's well-shod feet, and caught on the edge of a little plastic rubbish bin is a Mars bar wrapper. After 6 years battling for my place in a male-dominated newsroom, it should be easy to ignore Magliari's contempt, but those last awful months in London have left me shattered. The tough hide I thought I'd developed was no more than brittle plastic. Surely a man of your rank doesn't need that kind of permission. I make another stiff attempt at my winning smile. You could clear this up with one phone call? He puts down a file with just enough force to show his impatience. Why are you really here? I told you to compare the bracelet you found with the skeleton to the one in my photo. No, why are you in Italy? Good question. I could explain how I discovered the photograph and glimpsed an unknown past, tell of my curiosity about the three strangers pictured with my mother on a beach in Positano, how my mother, usually horrified by a public display, did nothing to stop the tears that spilled down her cheeks and dampened the neck of her nightie. Magliari wouldn't understand that. Nor would he understand why my mother's distress over this pile of bones retrieved from a chasm pierced my defenses, why I even needed defenses against my mother. Even I don't understand why I crossed half the world on the strength of her certainty that the remains belonged to a long-forgotten friend. Quality time with my mother always drove me to rash decisions. Signora, Magliari smacks his palm on the desk, why did you come to Italy? You could have faxed the photograph or asked your embassy, Interpol, friends of this Evie Broussard. I tried the embassy and Interpol. Evie's not a relative, she's not an Australian citizen, and on top of that, they won't spend time following up what they consider a hunch. How do you know she's even missing? He rocks a squeaky office chair. You say your mother has not heard from her in 28 years, yes? This is normal for holiday friendships. It's impossible to forget the smile that ghosted my mother's lips at the mention of her friend. She didn't let her past dictate her life. She was the only one who saw that I could be something more. It wasn't a holiday friendship. She said Evie Broussard was her best, her only friend. You come all the way from Australia because of that? He glances at another man sitting within eavesdropping distance, and they share a smirk. Why don't you just do your job? I snap. Then you can get back to munching Mars bars and I can get on with looking for Francelli's villa. His gaze sharpens, and I catch a glimpse of the interrogator he could be. What do you know of Villa Francelli? Let me see the bracelet. Why is this villa so important? What does it have to do with this? He waves his hand at the photograph of the bracelet. Let me compare them. If that bracelet is the same as the one you found, then there's a good chance the skeleton is Evie Broussard's. If not, then I'm out of your hair. I have told you I cannot. Well, I can't tell you anything about the villa. It's actually the truth. I don't know anything other than the scant information my mother let slip. If it wasn't for that damn Francelli and his villa. And now she's dead, left to rot in a cave. When I probed for more, she'd become defensive. I had a life before you came along. I'd heard that my entire childhood. I just never guessed that life could have been lived somewhere other than rural South Australia. With a muttered oath, Magliari abandons his cop stare and beckons the elegant blonde. He picks up a folder, leans back in his chair, and puts his feet on the desk. Whatever he says to the girl is short and sharp. Its meaning is clear enough. When she grips my arm and tries to hold me from the chair, I hook my fingers under the seat. Suddenly, it's as though getting Magliari's attention will solve all my problems, not just identifying the skeleton, but miraculously unraveling my mother's past and proving I'm not the fraud Simon accused me of, that I do have something to offer. Don't you want to know who this woman was? I ask. Don't you care? Magliari's feet hit the floor. You think I do not care? This is Napoli. Almost every week, sometimes every day, someone is killed. We have to treat every one of them as murder until we can prove otherwise. I have 25 open cases. 25. Distress crosses his face. I have misjudged him. Misjudgments are the only one thing I have perfected. Each of these corpses still has flesh on its bones, Signora Taylor. Each of these still has family living and mourning and wanting the killers punished. And for each of these, the Capo della Polizia demands I act faster, that I solve them, he snaps his fingers, like that. Hailed from across the room, he stands and grabs his pale linen jacket from the back of his chair. And now it seems I have another. Buongiorno, Signora. At least tell me where to go to see the bracelet. He summons two of his men and strides through the ordered rows of desks to the front exit. I jump to my feet and follow, raising my voice against the din of telephones and multiple conversations. Commissario, ignoring me won't make me go away. He spins on his heel and the din abates as though the whole squad is waiting for his answer. I warn you, do not interfere. This is not a cozy village. Murder speaks louder than any law. So it was murder. The damage to the skull is consistent with a fall. She's been down there 28 years, hasn't she? Leave it alone, Signora Taylor. I am too busy to deal with your clumsy questions, and I do not want to pull your body from a chasm. I do not like dealing with Interpol. His eyes drop to my thin T-shirt, then my ancient denim cutoffs. You could have at least dressed respectfully.